Welcome to the Ashraf Garda show. Rolene Strauss, welcome to the Marketing Wars feature on the Ashraf Garda show. Hi.
Thank you very much for having me. It's such an exciting time to be talking to you, Ashraf.
Yeah, indeed. We're going to talk about personal branding, and I think it's interesting because the last time we really met, you were Miss World, and so much has happened since then, right? But I'm particularly interested in terms of personal branding within the marketing space about a post that you posted on LinkedIn, right? About your personal brand and obviously all of us, right? So perhaps let's recap. What did you say?
So I think the most important thing, I've recently had a coaching client ask me to help her get clarity on her own brand. And one of the first things that I asked her was, first of all, what's the one thing you would want to be known for? And she had a clear answer. She wants to be known for this. But the second question kind of caught her off guard because I asked her, what's the one thing that you are currently known for by others? And a lot of the time, this is not congruent. And that means that we aren't really showcasing the desired personal brand we want. So it's so important to be able to look at your personal brand from an objective point of view, by doing something simple as Googling yourself or asking a close friend or a colleague to actually tell you what they think you resonate, what they think you stand for as a human being.
And do you think that happens often, that people know what they want to be known for, but they don't do this test that you're talking about in terms of what are they really known for, and sometimes, and not sometimes, often, therefore, there's this disconnect?
This happens very often, and it actually happened to me. That's when I realized how important it really is. And you've mentioned that, in the beginning, I was very known for being Miss World. And whenever I got to either public appearances or speaking to people, they would usually introduce me as, hi, this is Miss World, Rolene. And that's not necessarily who I want to be representing at the same time. It's been an amazing journey, so many doors for me. But at the moment, I want to be known as Rolene, the coach, the medical doctor, the entrepreneur. So I realized that I have to actively start working towards a new personal brand. And even though being Miss World will always be a part of it, I don't necessarily want it to be the first thing people think of when they think of me anymore.
Okay, that's such an important point because, yes, I mean, to a degree, you can't ignore the Miss World factor in providing you a global brand, right? But yes, I mean, that's, I think, 6 years ago. So you do want to move on, right? When did you realize that in fact you need to, not just mentally, but in terms of personal brand, you need to move on?
Yes, well, I remember when I went back to studying after winning Miss World. So I paused my medical studies for about 2 years, and I went back to studying medicine. And that was the first place I realized that people saw me as Miss World and not really as a medical student or a doctor. And after that, I decided to do my master's degree in philosophy and professional coaching, and the exact same thing happened. So I realized that I had to actively work on shifting my personal brand, not neglecting any part of it. And I think that's where the importance comes into beforehand, to actually plan your life 5 years in advance, to know that everything you do will be congruent with one another. So being Miss World is still congruent with who I am, and that was part of the bigger picture.
Okay, so you were known at that stage as Miss World for a long, long time, right? But you wanted to be known for and as something else. So then what are the active steps that you took to change how we view you?
So for me personally, the first step was to be able to create a platform for me to truly make a difference where I wanted to make a difference. And that is where Miss South Africa and Miss World came in. So that was part of the bigger picture. And a lot of, the current Miss South Africa top 15 has been announced yesterday. And a lot of people ask me, what advice can you give us as finalists for Miss South Africa? And the most important thing for me was to know why you are doing it. what are you going to do after Miss South Africa? This is not the be all and end all. So that was the first step to create this platform. And I knew that I will be known for being Miss South Africa and Miss World for a very long time. And there's also a great danger in shifting my brand too quickly, because people who are following me on social media and things like that, they started following me for being Miss World. So it's kind of a long process to slowly but surely introduce, I wouldn't say the new Rolene, but the real Rolene, but not scaring away anyone who's been following me for being Miss World. So it's been a long process, but I'm really enjoying it.
Okay, so I mean, I look at LinkedIn in particular, right? In terms of your bio and your title, I mean, point one, it says professional coach, right? And then listing a whole lot of other things, and only lower down, I think the second last item out of 5 things that describes you talks about Miss World 2014, and that does that reflect where the priority lies in terms of where you are now?
I think it does. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because I actually took a lot of time to be able to rank my bio according to importance for me, because I think that is actually in itself a very great exercise to be able to rank what you want to be known for. And very importantly, they should all be congruent with one another. Like I've mentioned before. So yes, my LinkedIn bio shows where my priorities lie at the moment.
Okay, I haven't quite checked on Instagram now, but does that reflect the same thing again, even those priorities? Or
It
is it
reflects the
different?
same thing. Yes,
Okay.
it
So,
reflects the same thing.
so when you posted, your thoughts on that, I made the point, and then, I replied to that to say that for me, one of the simplest ways of finding out, besides, sending out a questionnaire to 10 or 20 friends, is when you engage with people at whichever level, just do an exercise and ask them, and not ask them, in fact, just observe what is it the first thing they raise when they see you. Has that happened to you? Obviously, so in the past it was definitely Miss World. So now when people meet up for you, what sort of conversations do they kickstart when they meet you?
I can really say that that has shifted, especially when it comes to interviews. Usually when I had an interview with anyone or with someone, they used to bring up the topic of being Miss World and how did it go, how did it feel, what did you learn, and now it's more about personal growth. It's more about well-being, wellness, and like you've mentioned, you actually reached out to me to talk about personal branding, which is already a shift in the right direction for me. So that has been a great way to measure whether I'm really portraying who I want to portray.
Perhaps it's a good time to then just rewind in terms of what have you been doing post Miss World. I mean, you mentioned the medical doctor and a couple of things, but be more specific in terms of what have you been doing?
Yes, so I went back to finish my medical degree, and my husband Daniil and I got married in my 4th year of marriage. We fell pregnant about 3 months after we got married, and our first son was born the January that I started my final year of medical school. And that was such a hard year for me in various different ways, but I realized at the end of the year that I'm going to have to choose either medicine or family. For me at that stage, that was a choice I had to make, and I chose to prioritize my family. And it was about a year after that I realized that I went through such a difficult time when it comes to my self-confidence, not being known for who I wanted to be known for, always comparing myself to those out there, always trying to be perfect. And I realized that I wanted to do something, first of all, to equip myself to say no to perfect and to rediscover my self-confidence. But second of all, to help the women who also struggle with the same things that I struggle with. And that's when I embarked on the master's degree journey at the University of Stellenbosch Business School. So
Okay.
I'm currently still busy with that. And yes, and that's what I'm doing at the moment. I have so many wonderful coaching clients. And I'm also busy with an online product, an online coaching course, Rediscover Your Self-Confidence.
Okay, so here's the thing, and again, it's so difficult even for me to ignore the Miss World factor, not about the rah-rah, but about how it's helped the brand, right? So would you then say, although you put professional coach as your number one priority, how much of the fact that you were Miss World So you therefore are a Miss World, still opens up doors and allows you to leverage to get the clientele. Because when you talk about personal or professional coaching, you can say, I have a track record, I've done it. Of course, you've done a whole lot of other things, but how much of that still is a calling card for you?
It really is. I think when it comes to social media, the platform that I've been able to create, I think over 300,000 followers on Instagram, for instance, that really plays a big role. On the other hand, I get a lot of people requiring about pageant coaching, which is not what I do at all. So in a sense, it's helping me. In a sense, it's not helping me. But I would say that the majority of things that are happening from the Miss World platform is very positive. And when it comes to personal branding, I remember Danielle asking me or telling me this very, very valid story is to create mindshare in the marketplace. So if I were to ask you, okay, Ashraf, I'm going to mention one word or one thing, and then you have to tell me the first thing that comes to mind. Can we try that?
Go ahead and let's do it.
Okay, fizzy drinks.
Somehow Fanta, by the way, and I used to drink it, but not any longer.
Okay, cars.
Cars, BMWs for, there's a bias.
Okay, hotel.
Soho Sun, the group, some of others are closing, others are opening, so big concern, yeah.
Okay, honey.
Honey is something I drink, I put into my hot water and tea every morning, so it's very important to me. Yeah. Okay.
It is, but you couldn't really think of a brand, right?
Not at all. Yeah, it's experience.
And I think that's,
well, the Fanta, I did think of the brand, okay, but I think of the orange Fanta more.
Yeah. So most of these things, like the Fanta you've mentioned, like the BMW, the Soho Sun, they all have mindshare in the marketing place. They all have a brand that they stand for. And I think that's the one thing that's so important, is to identify, where you want mindshare and what's the one word you want to be known for. And my one word at the moment is well-being, wellness or well-being. So everything that I do, I want to be able to align with well-being. I want eventually, if someone thinks of well-being in South Africa, so that's where the Miss World as well as the coaching all aligns and plays a big role.
Okay, so that's important. I'll amplify that back to the point that if when you said car, the fact that I'm thinking BMW first, I think of others, but that's the one I'm willing to share. Says for some reason I have an affinity with it, or in fact it's so top of my mind that I can't ignore it. And are you saying therefore from a personal brand and even from a corporate brand, that's what they need to be wanting to do? So, share or mind share. Well, that's what we call this feature marketing wars, because it is a battle for space, isn't it?
It really, really is. And to be able to target your audience specifically, because a lot of the time we try to target too many people all at once. And we don't really have a very strong mindshare. We don't really have a strong brand because we want our bread buttered on both sides. So to be able to really, really focus on a specific target market is so important.
So if you want to be then known as the number one professional coach in the country and maybe in the world, what then are your plans? What systems have you put in place now? And you notice now I'm not even talking Miss World any longer. What are you actively doing to ensure that you are either being seen as number one or will be seen sometime down the line?
Yes. So the first thing is obviously to create credibility. So to finish my master's degree in management coaching at the University of Stellenbosch Business School and actively coach as many clients as possible and learning from that experience. And then to start my online presence as a coach. So I recently set out a free workbook called Balancing Time with Rolene. So to take it back a step, I did a lot of research to determine exactly who my target market is and what I can give them to benefit them. So, what experiences did I go through to benefit them? And I actually did a poll on Instagram, and about, I think 25,000 people voted on this poll. I asked women, what are the main thing that you're struggling with? And majority of women mentioned self-confidence. So that was the one thing that I've realized that I can have an impact on. And self-confidence has such a ripple effect on women all over the world. Whether you want to be able to fill a leadership position, if you don't have the self-confidence, you're not perceived leader. If you don't have the self-confidence, you can't really climb the corporate ladder as a woman in today's day and age. So there are so many benefits that you can gain from by building your self-confidence. So I'm also launching a self-confidence test. So which I did, your self-confidence potential that you're currently benefiting from, and then also puts you in a certain category and gives you a worksheet to work on. So that is also for free. And then obviously the self-confidence online test. So those are some of the things that I'm starting with and to be able to build my brand as a professional coach for my specific target market.
Okay, the first point you mentioned there was to establish credibility, and therefore you're completing your master's. But you've also sort of mentioned that there are times that you are vulnerable. So how do you teach positivity and super confidence when the teacher is vulnerable and feels vulnerable, and perhaps you may have also suffered from a drop of self-esteem and maybe a lack of recognition post Miss World?
Yes, that's a very valid question, and there are actually two answers to that. The first thing when it comes to coaching is I really believe that the mind that problem also holds the solution. So when I'm in a relationship with someone, I see that person as completely adequate and able to come to her own solutions. So my work as a coach is to get her thinking, to an environment for her to be able to find her own solutions, to overcome her own problems, and in that way actually enabling her to self-coach one day. So I believe that she's the expert and I am merely the vehicle for her, the catalyst for her thinking and to start making change. And then on the other side, one of the sources of self-confidence, so with all the research I've done, there are 4 sources of self-confidence. And one of them are, I call it secondary experiences. So kind of living through the experience of someone else. And that is I think I always tell my clients is to be very on a pedestal, to always remember that your role model is still human, but to actually draw inspiration from the qualities within the role model. So, the qualities of being vulnerable, that is actually a very big step into building your self-confidence, is to be vulnerable. And when someone sees that, I struggled with the same thing she struggles with, and I'm constantly working towards achieving success in this regard, that actually builds a client's self-confidence, knowing that I've been through the same thing that she has been through.
I think that's particularly important. That means that your humanness suggests that you can be emulated. If you're somebody from outer space, from out of this world, in this case here, then you can't be emulated. So I think that vulnerability is particularly important. So outside of establishing credibility, then you've mentioned social media and building your own platform. Share with us, if you can, some of the very deliberate actions you've actioned to grow the brand. That means actively promoting Rolene Strauss.
Yes. So the first thing was a mindset change. And I got asked the following question by, once again, he asked me, Rolene, if you could speak to a crowd of 300,000 people, what would you say? And the first thing that came to mind was, first of all, wow, 300,000 people, that is like the biggest crowd. That is the biggest crowd ever. I don't know if I'll ever have the opportunity, first of all. But second of all, what would I really say? What can I say that will help and assist 300,000 people? And he asked me to actually go have a look at my Instagram account. And the first thing I saw was 300,000 followers. And that mindset change and realizing that I have the opportunity to share something valuable with 300,000 people on a daily basis was the first step, to realize that your social media is such a powerful weapon. It's like the scalpel in the hand of a surgeon. It can either save a life or it can steal a life. So that was the first thing. And then once again, going back to not moving my brand too fast, not shifting my brand too fast. So I actually also started a Rolene Strauss coaching platform on Instagram. So I started a second platform to build my coaching practice there, and to know that whoever wants to follow me as a coach can go follow me there. A lot of more coaching content, and then eventually, if they align more closely, to actually combine the two Instagram accounts.
Okay, well, I'm certainly going to follow, and I do follow you, and you know that, but I'm going to follow you with a lot more interest in seeing how deliberate you've been in doing just that. Let me then end by talking about influencer marketing. I mean, you've done some campaigns, and somehow Standard Bank comes to mind. So if I'm wrong, then that's somebody's problem, that you've been aligned to those campaigns. Tell me about that, and again, your thought processes in agreeing to do that.
Yes, so influencing is such a powerful tool for both companies and also influencers. The one thing that I am personally very careful of is to not say yes to everything, because if you say yes to something, you actually say no to something else. And to be able to choose campaigns that also align with your brand, because first of all, it has to be congruent, it has to be believable, it has to be authentic. So choosing something that you really, really stand for personally as well. So that is the few things that I keep in mind when it comes to influencing. And I think in the time that we are in now, social media is so powerful, and where we got to speak in front of a lot of people, in front of a lot of crowds. This is a very valid source of income for a lot of influencers at this moment, where they're not able to do something else. So it's a lot of balls to balance with your social media accounts and being very careful. And that's also why I started the Rolene Strauss coaching page, where I'm not planning on doing any influencing on that page. I'm only planning on sharing my coach knowledge on there.
In a very professional way. That's okay. That's certainly good to consider. Just the last thing, therefore, in terms of the consulting work, because I mean that's really what you're doing now, right? How important is your name that you attach to it? So you're not necessarily saying Miss World, but you're certainly saying Rolene Strauss. Why I'm saying that, because often we have this debate, do you promote your name or do you promote the company name? Because if it's just your name, then you what happens if you're not there? Tell me about that.
Yes, so that is something that I've been thinking about a lot, and also I know that my name currently has a lot of potential, a lot of power to be able to start building the platform and the business. So if eventually or initially I am using my name, so I am using Rolene Strauss, but I am introducing another brand called Fearless Feminine Female, especially through my online course platform. So the main name of the movement, I would call it, is Feminine Fearless Female, and then I'm merely underneath that. But initially I am starting with Rolene Strauss to be able to build it to such an extent where I can actually start talking about the company name more often.
Well, there you are. I mean, just from my side, as we wrap up, because it's good feedback to you, now having a career post being part of SAFM and SABC. Yes, I have 2 podcasts, the Ashraf Garda show in my name, and then the Champion South Africa podcast. But again, if you look at even my social media things, the number one thing I want to be known for is that I head up the Champion South Africa movement. And I find that putting it out there, you'll be amazed at the type of people who will sign off and wish me well and say, hi, champion. And even if it's not literal, it resonates with exactly the point that I want to put out in terms of what my mission or my legacy wants to be.
Yes, exactly. And so important to be able to connect a human to the company or to the brand. I've seen so many times where, you get adverts on Instagram, adverts on Facebook. If there's not a person, if there's not a face, it's so much more difficult to connect with the brand and to feel like you can resonate and relate to the brand. So, I think that you are such a great advocate and such a great chairman of Champion South Africa, and I can really see that you're growing with leaps and bounds and making such a big difference in South
Well,
Africa.
absolutely. I have a sense we'll talk more about that conversation on that platform in terms of how to build champions, another discussion. But I can say as I let you go now that, yes, if we drop the title of Miss World or as being less important now, maybe number 5 out of 6, what can't escape you from our point of view is that you're very much a champion South African. So I'll sort of confer that for you very, very publicly. And now you know.
Thank you so much, Ashraf. It's good to talk to you.
Absolutely.